Now, of course, we had these ridiculous roundtables a couple of weeks ago that the government decided to run. Originally, they were going to be productivity roundtables. Then when the union movement decided we didn't want productivity, we want to actually send our economy backwards, they decided to call them economic reform platforms, and all that seemed to come out of them was suggestions to increase taxes. One of them, and it's been described by some people as a harebrained idea. I think that's being somewhat generous to try and fix the housing crisis, is to tax people who have a spare bedroom. To talk to us about this, we're joined by Steve Chandler, the Managing Director of Lefter. Steve, good morning.
Good morning, Steve.
You and I talk about housing all the time. Look, there's a lot of simple things that can be done to alleviate the housing crisis. Taxing people's spare bedrooms probably shouldn't be at the top of that list.
Mate, it's a shocker, hey. It's absolutely atrocious. Like, where do they come up with ideas like this? You know, it's imagine you work all your life, you eventually get yourself a home, you raise your family, and then your kids hit their 20s and they start going out and, living their lives, and suddenly you've got a spare bedroom. And the government goes, oh, let's tax you for that. What a great idea. You busted your gut to give your kids the best opportunity in life. And then the government says, well, we want to take a piece of that. Meanwhile, you're sitting there with your spare bedroom paying this ridiculous tax. I don't know how they're going to work it out, but, you're paying this tax. I get taxed for having a spare bedroom because maybe one of my kids, has to come back because the cost of living is too high. It's just ridiculous. Totally ridiculous.
But you look at it and think, well, firstly, how's it going to be policed? And I took a bunch of listeners out to lunch yesterday, and one of them jokingly said, we were talking about the $80 million Powerball jackpot, and I was talking about the house that I want to build if I win it. And he said, well, don't build too many bedrooms. They'll tax you on them. But, and I said, well, no. Well, I'll tell them one of them's a podcast studio and one's an office and one's, how do you, it's one of those ridiculous ideas that you can't even work out how they're going to do it.
Oh, from a developer's perspective, we've always got a way around some of the things that they put in place. One of the classics is if they're going to start taxing bedrooms, well, we're going to develop a product that has a room that is marginally smaller than what the minimum size is to call it a bedroom, and we'll call it a storeroom. And you know that when you sell the property, the person's going to use it as a bedroom. Now, the question
is... Or
you
can make it bigger and call it an MPC.
Yeah, it's just... Exactly. It's just, what are they thinking? This is just something that you could never enforce. And what about the people... This is the other one, Steve. What about the people who struggle, eventually get themselves a property, and they've got 3 kids in bunk beds in the second bedroom of their 2-bedroom unit? Do they get a tax deduction for putting more people in a room?
Well, that's right. But the other problem is, too, and we've now got they're bringing forward this 5% deposit policy, which on the face of it sounds great. Okay, you only need half as much deposit as you normally would have. We, the taxpayer, now become the guarantor for your deposit. But all it's doing is pushing prices up because we're not doing anything about the supply side.
I mean, why doesn't government just reduce some of the taxes on construction materials, which will bring the cost of construction down? And if you reduce, if you think of like property development's a business like everybody else, everybody's got to make a profit. And if we can't make a profit, we're not going to create the product. So if construction prices come down because they reduce tax, we as developers, if that then triggers us to be able to make the profit margin that we need, we're going to create the product because we know there's demand for it. But right now, we can't make a profit, so why would we invest our money into a project where we're not going to make a buck?
Yeah, it makes no sense at all. And unfortunately, there was an idea, apparently some Labor backbencher has suggested that politicians should all get a second job and live out in the real world. I think a brilliant idea because there's too many of them that don't know what's happening in the real world at the moment.
Oh, I'm not going to argue with that. Not going to argue with that at all.
Good on you, Steve. We'll catch up again soon.
Thanks, Steve.
All the best. Steve Chandler, property development expert, managing director of Lefter.